Welcome to Remembering the Forgotten, a space where leaders think out loud without polish or performance. No scripts, no personas, just what becomes audible when the noise drops and the mind is free to speak for itself. These conversations are not about delivering insight, they are about thinking together in real time, testing ideas against stillness, letting two open minds stretch each other. The intention is simple: to create a space where clarity can emerge and where listeners don't just consume perspectives, but feel permission to engage their own thinking more honestly. And today I'm joined by John Corcoran. John has spent decades close to decisions that carry real consequence, often inside complex healthcare and advisory environments where clarity cannot be postponed and outcomes matter. But this conversation isn't about roles, methods, or professional frameworks. It's about what remains when those fall quiet. It's about what becomes possible when presence replaces management, when listening deepens beyond response, when steadiness gives truth room to surface on its own. John brings a calm attentiveness shaped by years of being close to consequence. He knows when to engage, when to pause, and how stillness allows insight to emerge without force. This is a conversation about trust, not as reassurance, but as orientation, the kind that holds when moments matter. And with that, John, welcome to the show.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much, Marcus. Looking forward to our little chat.
It's my pleasure, John. So before we begin, when I speak of coherence, I'm pointing to a state where nothing inside is in conflict. Body, thoughts, emotions, and action aligned, moving as one. No push, no urgency, no fear driving the moment. And when I speak of stillness, I do not mean silence. I mean the part of you untouched by expectation or performance. The place that knows before the mind tries to manage it. That's the ground I'd like us to meet on today.
Sounds good. I'm ready.
Wonderful. So, with that, John, where can you just be yourself?
I would have to say, having just come off a nice vacation with some extended family, um, that vacation for me has always been a place where I can just be myself because I'm spending time with people I care about. So whether I'm on a golf trip with buddies or I'm with my wife and it's just the two of us, or immediate family or extended family, I feel like I've chosen to be with these people in this situation. So therefore, I know I can be myself with them. And since we like to travel, and I don't have a one type thing that I do for all my vacations, like people that have a beach house or a lake house, that's their
Mhm.
happy place. They always go there. So they may answer the question differently. But here's the nuance to that. Because we like to travel and go different places, those people don't know me. So I interact with them. After I leave from vacation and go back home, I may never, most likely will never see them again. So I feel like I can truly be myself. I can dress how I want to dress. I can be who I want to be. I can truly be myself. If someone engages me in a conversation on a tour of a museum in France, I don't have to mince words and I can just be who I am. And maybe it enlightens them, maybe it aggravates them, but I'm me. And I try not to be insulting because that's not me. And so that's a place that I truly don't have to watch what I do, what I say, what I look like.
I love your answer, and it provokes a reaction from me. So, I know you. You are not insulting, You are not provoking to the level that it would make someone extremely uncomfortable. So this begs the question, why wouldn't you do it wherever you are? What
I think
holds you
maybe
back?
I think maybe my upbringing and wanting to kind of do the right thing. You know, my parents taught us about like doing the right thing, whatever that is, that because that's up for grabs. I mean, we could put a group of 10 people together, throw a situation out. We might come up with five different solutions. People would go in different directions, and
Mhm.
we'd have five different things, right? So I think that part of it, and then being in working in the corporate world where there's like a corporate culture. So it's not that I'm being a phony or trying to wear a mask, but I will play a role. And if my role as a manager is to live up to the expectations of Marcus, my CEO, or Mary, my CEO, I might have to do things that are moral and legal and ethical. Let's put it that way. But that John on vacation might not do. I might let somebody slide if it were my business. I might let them slide if it was vacation. I might let them slide if it was personal time. But because the company culture says this is the rules, this is how we have to play, I can't really be myself in that situation. I have to err on the side of the CEO, in my opinion. And that's maybe the compliance person in me. I agreed to take the job. I agreed to be compliant. And so therefore I've got to fulfill that. And yeah, sometimes it's frustrating.
I like your answer, and this makes me actually dive into a detour. Um, you network a lot, so you get to know a lot of people. You get to know a lot of your generation, and you get to know a lot of the younger generation. I am born in 72, so I'm probably just in between of these two. And what my work shows, John, is that the new generation of managers tend to call themselves leaders and are very much human and employee centered. Where do you see the challenge between probably most CEOs are more or less around my age, old school? I am absolutely aware that if someone is being paid 500,000, it's not because they are damn good. It's because they forfeit certain privileges that lower level employees still have. As you mentioned them, you are centered toward CEO, you're centered toward culture, you're centered toward policy, which probably normal level employees do not really understand. And they even wonder, why the heck would you do that? But I see a new generation of leaders coming on the scene now who are not used to that. How do you personally experience that in your day-to-day life? Because I know you're still very much in business.
Right. Well, I think the struggle is is that without certain, rules and policies and ethics that we live by, then I think rank and file employees, or like you say, the lower level employees, don't really have anything to at least agree to or disagree to, because
Mhm,
it's a little bit squishy, so to say. It's not as
mhm,
hard fast. And so without that, I think there's a lot of misunderstandings, and the younger generation doesn't like as many meetings because they came up, many of them, early on in COVID. And once managers realize that you don't have to meet every week in person and we can still get work done, that's true. But then you lose that closeness of the I guess the body language, the ability to be in the same room with someone, being able to almost finish their sentence or know where they're going before they go there. And there's that culture that, good, bad, or indifferent, someone set that culture, and usually it's the supervisor. But I think right now the biggest challenge is that the younger workers, who probably are more talented than you and me put together,
mhm,
they are not going to reach as much of a potential as you and I did, because they're
mhm,
not going to have the day-to-day serendipitous exposure to a mentor. And I say
Mhm.
serendipitous because we
Mhm.
still have mentors, and the mentors will have training sessions, or they'll call you in on, you could do it on a Zoom call, you could do it on a phone call. Hey, Marcus, you didn't do this when we were in the meeting the other day. I just want to bring it to your attention. No big deal, but going forward, you might want to do this. Gee, thanks, boss. I'm going to do it better. Those things, those are pivotal situations. The
Mhm.
serendipitous one is we just happen to be there. Something serendipitously comes up. I share something, and the worker says, "Wow, that's something I've got to remember. I would never have known that. I like the way you did that. I think I could use that in my life." That happens when you're working with someone 9 to 5 in an office together. It just happens, and we give
It's
that up. We
water cooler
forfeit that.
moment, right?
We forfeit that when we are working remotely and we're on Zoom
Yeah.
calls and phone calls and texting.
It's exactly the coffee machine or the water cooler
Yeah,
moment, which
exactly
the
what I
new
was just about to
generation
say.
totally misses out, right?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Because I remember when COVID hit, I was back in Switzerland still, and I had a conversation with a client of mine. And he was someone who was literally longing to go back to the office as soon as it was just halfway allowed. And he did. And, we discussed about careers, we discussed about trajectory of careers. And a younger person said, but Marcus, not much changes. I said, yeah, actually, the most pivotal thing changes. It's exactly the water cooler and the coffee machine moments. Because let's be honest, that's where most of the careers actually are being built. The informal conversation one overhears, gives it some thought, speaks to his peers, and suddenly John Corcoran gets called into the office and say, look, we have this position open. We actually would love to consider you. And you wonder, where the heck do they even know me? It's a coffee machine moment.
Yeah.
So there's this one element which you know very well from online marketing to know, like, and trust. And I believe this water cooler and this coffee machine, as metaphoric as they kind of build the foundation for the trust. And I know that so many people are so frustrated that the so-called trust factor can almost not be built online because the know and the like doesn't really fly well.
Mhm.
So trust has a different foundation, John, than know and like. What would you say personally it is for you?
I mean, for me, I don't know I did work through COVID, but I had many, many years of working prior to COVID, and I got out very quickly once the quarantine was down and we could meet. I also had some clients that were in education and healthcare, and so we were very cautious with masks and gloves. One place, one hospital, they made me put on the surgical gloves to go in because they
Mhm,
said most germs are from the hands, not from the
mhm,
mouth. We
mhm,
worry about spitting, but most of the germs are on our hands. So they were ahead of the thing. So I was back in the game quickly, like within weeks. But the people who went a year and then they got sucked into it. I think that's where we're going to see problems, down the road. My son is 31, and he has a really nice job as an analyst, senior analyst, with a real estate company that does impact investing. So the billionaire that left the hedge fund and started this company wanted to do low and medium income housing. He did not want to do the Taj
mhm,
Mahals and the
mhm,
Plaza
mhm,
hotels. Okay, and so they're doing billion-dollar projects in cities around the country, putting in housing because we have a housing shortage, and how can we do this right? And they do it as an investment,
That's
so
noble.
everybody's making money. It's a for-profit company,
Mhm,
but there's a
mhm,
culture within the company. My son is working 4 days in the office, 1 day out, and he said to me, Dad,
mhm,
it is perfect. He said, I get
mhm,
4 days of mentorship. If I need an answer, I knock on the door, I stick my head in, Marcus, blah, blah, blah. Thank you, Tim. Goodbye. Okay, I'm gone. He said, you know how long I would need to get a quick answer in person?
Mhm.
If I wanted to have a quick conversation, it would
Mhm.
be, let's do 2 o'clock. Oh, I'm stuck. Can we do 2:15? No, I have a 2:15. All right, let's do 4. He said, Dad, I would have had that done in 5 minutes by
Mhm.
10 o'clock in the morning. And now I'm into the next day. When they were
Mhm.
in the COVID, working from home every day, he hated it.
Mhm.
And then he's
Mhm.
young. He's the 31-year-old, right? But he said that one day, when I can just shut everybody down. The analysis that I get, my spreadsheets, he said, I get 3 days worth of work in one by having the
Mhm.
one. And my boss knows it. And he never bothers me on that day unless it's an emergency. And he said, and I know what I need to do. And I can just get so much work done in that day because no one's sticking their head in saying, hey, Tim, do you have a minute? But those other 4 days, I'm happy to have a minute for them. So he sees the balance of that. And he said he would never want to go to more than 3 and 2. If somebody's doing three
Mhm.
and two, it's okay. But he said, he has cousins that are working 100% from home. To your trust, they've never met some people that have been working there 5 years and they never
Mhm.
have met in person, shook their hand, had a lunch with them, broke bread with them. Never. Where's the trust going to come from when you're on Zoom? I could be talking to you. I could have a knife in my back. I could be sitting with no clothes on below the camera.
Mhm.
Where's the trust? I'm
Mhm.
trusting that you have clothes on, but you don't. But who cares?
Mhm.
Because we're on Zoom. We're not in a relationship. So I'm a
Mhm.
relationship guy, good, bad, or indifferent. So I would hope that the young people would come around and realize that they're really no different than my grandfather. We all want to be connected to people. We all want relationships. I don't care how old you are, whatever. And we can't do it when we're working from our apartments. And I feel bad for the kids that are living alone. They want to live in the city, they want to get their apartment, they got it, and now they have no place to turn. They eat, they
Mhm.
sleep, and they work in the same studio apartment. And I don't know what effect that's going to have on them long term.
An interesting answer. And I believe this pretty much builds an issue for the future. Because if trust building has never been learned or taught, that's what mentors are here for, right? I believe the foundation of business and relationships pretty much lays bare. I remember when you and I first went on a call, which is more than a year ago now. Remember, we had instantaneous trust. Why would you say that was? Why is it possible that people who never met, yes, we did have something in common, the connective, but I don't think that was more like a shared interest. So, what is it that two people can meet? Whereas if we met in person, we had the five senses, right?
Mhm.
And as you know, I've been teaching for 20 years, and two senses literally go away as soon as you go on Zoom. So, how is it possible, John, that two people can meet, two senses are gone, vital senses, and it's still possible that trust is being built almost instantaneously?
I wonder if it goes back to my first answer when you asked me about where can I be, my true self. The fact that you and I met through someone we both trusted, therefore I knew that he wouldn't associate with bad people. So I already had a confirmation bias that I liked you before I got there. And you would have to prove to me that you're not as nice as you should be because of the person who introduced us. But
That's an
then in
interesting
our
one.
but then in our conversation, we were able to get into things that I might not have talked about with people I know for 20 years because
Mhm.
in the work situation, I might be afraid to bring that subject matter up. I
Mhm.
might, I might, even if I'm non-threatening and I'm respectful, they might now label me, and that could hurt my career unintentionally. I didn't intend it to do that, and I certainly wasn't trying to insult anybody, but they may not like me because we don't share the same political view. I have
Mhm.
people that I
Mhm.
love dearly, friends of mine that I love dearly that have absolute opposing political views. And we can
Mhm.
talk about it because we agree to
Mhm.
understand, not agree to disagree. We agree to
Mhm.
understand. I know we disagree, but when I understand why he or she feels that way, I can love him and accept him. I'm not changing my values, nor do they expect me to. But in a friendship situation, whether it's on Zoom or in person, I can be myself. And I think me being myself, I noticed immediately you were going to be yourself. And so I think that's where our trust came in the fact that we were able to talk about anything and everything, and we didn't have to worry about you're my boss, I'm your boss, you're my customer, you're my client, you pay the bills, you keep the lights on, I don't, I work for you. There's a lot of extra, good, bad, or indifferent, there's a lot of extra chatter and noise that gets into relationships when there's something on the line, when it's a business situation. Either you work for me, I work for you, or you're my supplier, or I'm your vendor, or you're my customer, I'm your client. And there's a certain, you can't really let your hair down, so to speak, in that situation where you and I could say whatever to you and take my chances. Because if it
I
didn't
love
work,
that.
if it didn't work, we never talk again. And my life still is fine and your life still is fine.
Exactly. I love that. You said something extremely pivotal, which I've never heard this way, by the way. So thank you. An American thing is to agree to disagree. And I believe it sets yourself up for almost failure because you almost expect to either agree or to disagree. But you said agree to understand. And I believe that brings one of the most important characteristics into play, and that's curiosity. Because this is something I saw from the first second with you, that you're extremely curious. You ask questions, but not questions to fill the time. You ask questions to understand.
Mhm.
So now I've been just wondering, and I fully agree with you, John. It is, especially in today's climate, it's highly risky to lower your hair, let down your hair, and just be yourself. However, isn't it even more important today that there are peer-to-peer conversations taking place without any intent, without any underlying motive? And this is honestly something which I am personally looking for. Having conversations with people just like us, where people meet. And I'm beyond that point where I say I'm going to pay for a membership anymore. Because to be honest, and you probably realize that as well, when someone pays, it basically almost like forfeits certain criteria because that guy paid. And I believe if more managers, more leaders would have these kind of conversations we have, where they actually can lower their hair,
Mhm.
it would be so much easier in their day-to-day managerial work and jobs to actually function. Because it's almost like it builds kind of an equilibrium, and it builds a kind of a vault that you have that moment. And, I say to my clients, for example, it is so different if you have a good relationship with your wife and you can speak about anything, or if you have someone outside who you can just be yourself. So I love the agree to understand. When did you come up with that?
I wish I could find out where it was, but it was a couple of years ago. Not my whole life. I didn't have that in my
Interesting.
backpack. I lived it, but I didn't necessarily have it. But agree to understand instead of agree to disagree, because I think agree to disagree is almost a contemptuous comment. It's like, all right, enough, Marcus. Let's just agree to disagree. I'm
Yeah,
dismissing
yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm saying I don't want to hear
Yes.
anything more that you said. And when I heard that, and I've said it to people, I've gotten plenty of comments back where people have said, "Wow, I used that with my brother, and now we're talking again. Thank you so
Mhm.
much." Well, I'm happy to share it. It's like to me, that's what the world. I want to leave the world a little bit better today. So in case I die tomorrow, I did something good today. That's all. I don't want to leave it worse today than I did tomorrow. So, um, but I think if we knew a person's background So if somebody had a different background than me, we look alike, we look the same, we wear the same clothes, we're about the same age, and now we live in the same town, we live almost in the same house, we drive the same car. When I say to that person, well, how could you, and I'm just you, vote for that candidate?
Mhm.
And then they say, well, let me tell you about how I was brought up. And then father worked 6 jobs and was never home. And
Mhm.
his mom worked 2 jobs and they couldn't get the bills together and whatever. And they had no family and this and that. And then they had to go out and then they did this and they did that. Well, you see, that, wow, that's different than the way I grew up. I grew up in a family where we didn't have excess, but we had enough. And
Mhm.
you never had enough. He said, we never had enough. We were always scrounging to try to get it up to something. And then, so therefore I can't vote for a capitalistic person at all, someone that's going to
Mhm.
promote big business is the answer to everything and all the jobs will go up because of that. We didn't even have jobs that could have gotten up because we
Mhm.
couldn't, my father didn't have any education because his father didn't have any education. So now I understand where
Mhm.
that person's coming from. Then I
Mhm.
explain why I am, and then all of a sudden they listen. And I've had people say to me, "Wow, I never realized that. Yeah, if the business does well and they hire more people, that's more jobs. And I was just focusing on greedy corporate America, and I never wanted to be in that or whatever.
Mhm.
That person is not voting Republican anytime soon, and I'm
Mhm.
not going to vote for a socialist anytime soon." But
Mhm.
we can now have a good relationship together because I listened and I understand where that person is coming from. I had a guy talk about, white privilege, and it's hogwash. And even some of
Mhm.
the people in there were like, wait a minute, if you don't look like us, I agree that people could be, definitely the color of your skin. People just make a decision. You could be a billionaire,
Mhm.
but if they don't
Mhm.
like the color of your skin, so let's just, whites have white privilege. He told the
Mhm.
story of his father and grandfather and where they worked and how they were treated as immigrants. And when you look at that, I'm like, wow, I understand why he could be a little bit feeling like, don't give me
Mhm.
this white privilege. I didn't have any privilege growing up. And he didn't.
Mhm.
He
Mhm.
I had a black man living next to him. He lived a life of luxury compared to what my friend Brian told me. So
Mhm.
after I talked to him about that, he and I could agree to understand each other. And,
Mhm.
hopefully after I described some things to him, he would, understand the other side of my story, which I was trying to say that in this world, um, I have black friends that no matter how they're dressed, if they walk into a CVS, somebody's following them around the store. But you get the
Mhm.
worst dressed person that's white, and they walk around the store, and
Mhm.
it's like, oh, the security cameras will worry about it. I'm not worried.
Mhm.
And why is
Mhm.
that? And we've proven that. That's not my opinion. Okay, that's
Right.
not my
No,
opinion at all.
it's
That's the
bias.
fact.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and so, but he couldn't understand that, and he just was going back at it, back at it, back at it. So we had that conversation, but agreeing to understand, he got it, and then he said, "Well, no one's ever really listened to my side of the story." I said, "Now that I've listened to it, I understand how you are, who you are, and I still love you." You know,
You see, that is the view you just mentioned. Like when, let's say his name is Brian, when Brian says never really listened to. So what does that actually mean? No one ever asked him.
right? And also maybe he never allowed himself to say, do you want to hear why I think the way I think? I think he got so defensive, the other person got defensive, and it was one of these.
But isn't that
There's both sides.
exactly what's taking place in today's political climate?
Yeah, it's two sides. I think I should ask people about themselves and so that I can understand them and give them a chance to be heard. Okay, but I also have an obligation to ask people if they want to hear why I say. I shouldn't just say, well, no one asked me today, so I'm no, that's not the way you should be. And I shouldn't say, well, I just open up my feelings, and so everybody should do that. I'm not going to ask anybody their opinion. It doesn't
Right.
work either way. We have to be both
No,
ways.
no, it
We
does
have to be
not.
open when people don't ask us, and we have to ask when people don't freely share.
Remember when I came to the US? You were one of those five, John. I went on 5 calls, and those resulted in 100 plus introductions.
I remember you saying that.
And 8 weeks later, after these 8 weeks, I have a Rolodex of somewhere between 350 and 500 high caliber people. And I believe it comes down to what you just said. If we actually reach out to the other person and want to understand, ask the question that really opens the other person's trust factor, it is almost a given, John, that you can easily slide in your opinion after the other person has shared theirs. Because you see, you and I, we are not just privileged in terms of what we talked about, but we are privileged in terms of we are used to communicate. We are used to asking the questions. We are used to receive trust almost immediately from other people. And that always invited us to share about us, almost to the point where people said, and John, enough about me. What about you? How do you see the world? How do you see and experience life, right?
Yes.
And I believe for everyone who listens now, this agree to understand really is based on curiosity and respect. And this will always, I literally say, always open the doors. They otherwise actually stay closed. So this leads me to another question, John. Do you remember a time where you realized I'm living someone else's script? And what changed after you had that realization?
That usually I have an answer for everything, good, bad, or indifferent. But you know, I think early on, my parents, told me to be my own person, and they equipped me with some nice transferable skills that I was able to take out in the world. And I had a lot of. I don't really believe that I ever lived someone else's script or someone else's life. I feel blessed that I was able to do that. I can't say that I ever worked in a job that I didn't like, because as soon as I didn't like it, I set out for another job. So I didn't really have to
Mhm,
live in someone else's world. And there were times where I saw things starting to move down, getting into potential illegal down the road. We weren't there yet. I wanted to get
mhm,
out before it got there. I didn't like the
mhm,
way we
mhm,
treated people, and all of a sudden a new manager came in and treated people poorly. And if I had to be part of that culture, I couldn't do it. I just looked for another job. I was responsible enough never to quit without getting another job. But that's why I had so much experience in getting another job, because I started networking and asking around. And then once people found out that I wasn't happy where I was, but at least I had a job, they were like, "Oh, would you want to come work for us?" But a lot of times, if I had lived, to your point, if I had lived what you just said in someone else's, value or whatever, I might have stayed in that job, been miserable. And then when people saw me, it would be like, boy, his credentials are good, but I never want him working here. He's what a downer
mhm,
he is, or he's
mhm,
always, he seems miserable all the time. I don't need somebody that working for me. So I did the
mhm,
opposite. I promoted myself as, hey, I'm thinking about making a move, looking to advance. And if you know anybody, let me know. I'd love to talk to
mhm,
them about the industry, see if I'm on the right track. Maybe I'm not. And then all of a sudden I've got, well, listen, if you're looking, would you want to come work for me? It becomes their idea, so
I
so
remember
yeah,
that
I would have to
conversation.
I would have to say that that's not something that, I wish I had a good story for that, but I never really lived somebody else's life.
I love that. So, John, and this is the last question. If someone feels lost in the noise, the opposite of stillness and coherence right now, they're struggling if they are drowning, what would you want them to remember?
I would want them to maybe take an inventory of the little things in life, how they touch people's lives, and get them talking about that. Because to get them to talk about, well, look at how great you are, they don't feel very great right then. So they're going to just turn me right off. But if I said to them, let's just look at some small things, tell me about your family, tell me about, and I don't want to be the therapist. There's a place for therapists and they do a great job. And maybe in a different world, with different education and a different, start to my career, maybe I would have done that because I like helping people. I like to, I'm not always looking for what's in it for me. I find that if you help enough people get what they want out of life, I get what I want out of life in the end anyway. But what I would say to them is if they looked at the small things, um, you know, uh, especially if they think that their life isn't worth anything, I would say, well, if I gave you, $1 million, you could do whatever you want with it. What would you, do? Would you accept the deal? And they kind of look at you like, of course. I said, well, there is one caveat. The caveat is that you die tomorrow. You can spend it all day today, but you die tomorrow. And almost everyone, I have never seen anybody that ever says the other. They're like, oh no, I can't take that. So I said, so if your life is worth $1 million for one day, you want to live more than one day. So your life is worth more than $1 million. Let's go back and take a reset. It gets people thinking differently. And then they start to think about the small things, how they touched their aunt when their aunt was sick, or they drove their sister's child to school for the week when she had the flu. And it's like, wow, look at that. And I think we look at our problems like in a microcosm, like my business failed. I'm a failure. No, my business failed. I'm not a failure. But we start to think that I'm a failure and we focus on the moment. And then we forget about the good we did for the past 6 months in people's lives and the good we could do for the next 16 years in their lives. And and that's where I think people go down, kind of the rabbit hole, as they say. But I think we need to look at the small things, the little things we do in life that makes a difference in people's lives. And then I think we would be able to attack the issue and get ourselves out of that spiral as opposed to just continuing the spiral.
I love that, John. And one sentence to what you said before, I am so grateful you have not become a therapist. You know why? Because people get to talk to you who would never even set foot into a therapist's office.
True. I didn't think about it like that. Yes. Thank you. Good.
With
I'm not going
that,
back. I'm not going back for my master's in psychology
nope,
anytime. So I'm going to
unless
stay
you
where I
want
am. I'm going to
frameworks.
stay where I am, Marcus. Thank you for that. Yeah, good. See, there's perspective. I at one point I'm almost lamenting, well, gee, what good could I have done? Maybe I could do more good on the outside than on the inside. Good.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
sure whether you know that. You're welcome. There are quite a few people who say to me, Marcus, I have become a coach because I wanted to help people. And they ask me to help them. You know what I say to them? If you cannot make it financially, this is a sign. Go back to what you've been doing before, because that's where you of real help in day-to-day mundane conversations. And that's where you can help people in the trenches.
Yep.
So what
Yep.
you're doing is fantastic. Keep doing what you're doing, John.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for this opportunity. It was great to have this chat with you, Marcus.
Thank you so much for this conversation, John. It's been a great pleasure. So this was Remembering the Forgotten, a conversation held in clarity, not performance. If something in this exchange shifted in how you see, let it stay with you. A few quiet pointers are waiting below.